Well, thanks everyone for being here. My name is Krista Beckman. I work at the Lamont Music Library, and I'm also an alumna of Lamont. I'd like to start off by just thanking our panelists for being here, our three panelists who we will get to know more in a couple minutes, and also all of the students, prospective students, the three of you who are here. We appreciate you as well. Just so that you know, this meeting, I keep calling it a meeting, it's an event. This event will be recorded. So if you don't want your face showing up in the recording, just feel free to turn your camera off. Of course, we'd love to see your faces as well. So that's up to you. And then just keep yourself muted if you would while somebody else is talking. And we have some other folks with us from Lamont and from DU Career Services as well. First up is Angela Mitchell.
Hi, everyone. It's so great to see you here on Zoom tonight. Thank you for being here. I am the enrollment specialist for the Lamont School of Music. So essentially, I'm the recruiter for the school. I'm your first line of contact, first point of contact for any music admission-related questions if you're thinking of applying to Lamont. I happen to be a current student myself. So I'm, in my third year of work in this position, and I've been taking advantage of my tuition waiver, and I'm getting a performance certificate right now from the Lamont School of Music. I'm a singer, and my degrees are in music and business, and I have my master's in music. So I wanted to just say hello and welcome. And in case you don't know much about the Lamont School of Music, I have a single slide that I'd love to share with you that goes over just some basic facts about the school. So let me get that shared here. So we are no more than 300 students, which is on the smaller, more intimate side for a music school, but still big enough to do really exciting things like have an opera program and a full symphony orchestra and a big jazz program, in addition to a lot of multi-genre ensembles like steel drums and North Indian classical dance, and a lot of really fun things going on. So we have small class sizes with about a 4-to-1 student to faculty ratio. We offer undergrad degrees in performance, composition, recording and production, and the genres of music that we focus on are classical and jazz. We give so many performances every year. In a typical year, this year's a little different, but in a typical year, over 300 performances in the wonderful Newman Center for the Performing Arts, which you see in the background of the slide there. And in my Zoom background here, this is the exterior of the beautiful Newman Center, which is one of the finest performing arts facilities at a university in the United States. We have 4 big performance spaces, including this Gates Hall in the background here. The whole 5th floor is reserved just for practice rooms. We have 30 practice rooms. We are an all Steinway school. And we have a music library, which is hosting the event tonight, along with career services, and then a state-of-the-art recording studio. And then, as you know, Lamont is part of the University of Denver, a world-class private research and liberal arts university. Just a couple of things I wanted to note here for admission purposes. Our deadline that you got to keep in mind is January 15th, 2020. 2021, I'm sorry, I'll update that when we get off here. January 15th is when we need to receive both your application and your audition, which this year we are only doing recorded video auditions. So you can check out all of the requirements and your audition requirements on the Lamont website, du.edu/Lamont. And then I'm going to, when I get off here, I'll stick my email in the chat, and then I'm going to hang around at the end to answer any questions you have about the Lamont School and the admission process. So thank you very much.
All right, thank you so much, Angela. And moderating the panel this evening is Megan Pritchett from Career Services.
Awesome, thank you. So again, I know we don't have a huge audience, and so Isabella, Caitlin, and Colleen. Actually, if you wouldn't mind in the chat box, if you wouldn't mind indicating if you're a current student, prospective student, and if you're a current student, what specific program you're in at Lamont, and if you're a prospective student, what you're maybe interested in, that would be really helpful. And then also, if you have any kind of questions or what brought you here or something that you would love to learn more about from our panelists or from the school, I'd love to just have you enter that in the chat. We can just kind of make sure to address that and not just dive into questions. But I'm really excited again. Thank you to Madoka, Zach, and Seth for joining me. And again, we'll share this recording with current students as well, because obviously they're stressed and could not make it to the panel tonight. So we'll definitely make sure that they have access, you have access to this recording as well. All right, so Isabella, current student, first year computer engineering, but I'm minoring in music, starting music classes next quarter, super cool. Caitlin, prospective student, interested in clarinet performance. And Colleen, current first year at Lamont, studying flute performance. Awesome, welcome, thank you all for doing that. So, I mean, for our panelists, I think I'm going to kick off the first question just to introduce yourself and your background to the students and prospective students. So if you could share just kind of a little bit of an overview of your arc, your professional story. And as a part of that, if you could include, especially for Caitlin, our prospective student, why did you choose Lamont and how did you come to that decision? So Madoka, I'll kick it off to you first, and then if you want to popcorn to either Zach or Seth after you.
Okay. Hi all, my name is Madoka. I'm a pianist and I work as staff pianist. Can you guys hear me? Okay. And I came to Lamont in 2008 as freshman, and that was my first time in the United States. I was born and raised in Japan. I grew up in Japan. And I wanted to study English and piano, both equally. And there wasn't any good place that I could do that. If I go to conservatory in Japan, I have to sacrifice language. If I go to a university for a language, I have to sacrifice piano. And my mother, my wonderful mother, said, why don't you just go somewhere that speaks English so that you're passively learning or having to learn English, and then you can take lessons too. And I was like, great, I'll do that. And I applied for maybe 6 schools in the States, and Lamont gave me the best scholarship. And also when I Googled all the schools on Google Maps, Colorado was green and mountains, whereas New York was concrete color, Arizona was desert color, and California was just too expensive to go. And I also visited here in April before I decided to come here. And my teacher, Stephen Mayer, took me around to see the campus, see the area. And I just loved how beautiful everything was. And this also reminds me of home, like a lot of nature. So that's how I came to Lamont. Oh, do I need to add what I did after Lamont?
Sure, if you want to just jump in and kind of what
okay, sorry, I forgot your question. And then after I graduated from Lamont, I went to Indiana for my master's, solo performance in piano. Relating to what I do now, which is, traditionally known as accompanying. I loved playing with people. When I was in Japan, I practiced piano a lot, and I loved playing solo music. I didn't do any chamber music. There was just no opportunity. And at Lamont, of course, we have the accompanying requirement, and I just loved it. For some reasons, for obvious reason, I liked playing with other people. I did bigger chamber music as well. And when I was applying for a master's degree, I saw more problems in me with piano technique than playing with people. So I looked for schools for solo piano, but the 2 years of a master's at IU, I did a lot of accompanying, which my teacher was not happy about, but I just went with my passion. And when I graduated, I kind of missed Colorado after living in Bloomington for 2 years. So I kind of wanted a little rest and also successful freelancing career. And I knew I had network that I made while I was at Lamont. And I've been here since then.
Great, thank you. And then maybe Zach, let's kick it off to you next.
Okay. Hey everybody, thanks for having me. So I'm Zach. I graduated from Lamont in 2016. I believe I started the same year as Krista. We came in as master's students. I studied guitar performance, classical guitar performance. Before that, I was in Omaha, Nebraska, where I also studied classical guitar. I originally came to Denver because Ricardo Ismaola was the guitar teacher here, and he's just extraordinarily famous in the classical guitar world. And I'd taken lessons with him and done some master classes. And so DU was actually my top pick for program. But I auditioned at several other schools, and luckily Lamont gave me everything that I wanted. I had a TA position and everything else. And I also noticed when I was researching musicians that I admired, a lot of people tend to stick wherever they did their last degree. And so Denver was kind of high on my list because Denver's such a cool city. And so I was really, really happy to be able to go to Lamont when I did. And so I did the master's program there. And after that, I began teaching in Colorado. I was teaching at the STEM school down in Highlands Ranch for about 2 years after I graduated. And I was also at that time touring with a flute and guitar duo that I play with. And we had commissioned, we did a lot of new music, so we would commission composers to write music for us. And so we commissioned several Lamont composers, and then we would do tours around the States and internationally to play their works. And did that for about 2 years. And then I hit a point where I realized I was doing a lot of teaching and not nearly as much performing. So I decided to kind of change gears, and I made a new sort of audition tape, and I just sent it off everywhere. And I ended up getting hired to go on a Broadway tour in 2008. So in 2008, I started touring with the Broadway musical Finding Neverland, and we went, it was 262 performances over 9 months, all over the United States. I think we played 45 different states. It was intense. It was the most intense gig I've ever had. And then immediately after that, I started doing cruise ships and a lot of regional theater. There's several theaters in Colorado that didn't have guitarists, and so I was able to kind of sneak my way in and get invited back several times to work with them. And so this last year I was doing cruise ships before the pandemic hit. And once the pandemic hit, then, all the gigs stop and you have to kind of reassess everything. And so that kind of brings us to where we are today. So now my career, there's not really any performing, but now I'm doing a lot of session work, and I'm teaching a lot more, just private lessons and things like that. So that's in a nutshell kind of what I've been doing. Since the pandemic hit too, I've also tried to tie up some loose ends that were left when I went on tour. So I wanted to always be published. I've arranged a lot of music. And so during the pandemic, I said, you know what, let's make this happen finally. So I put the work in, and now I'm going to be published. Some of my arrangements are going to be published soon. And so that's sort of what I've been doing since the COVID crisis, is tying up loose ends, and then, working on things that I haven't done before, like session work and things like that. So I think I rambled on enough. If anybody has any questions, I'm very happy to answer them. So I'll pass it off to Seth now.
Is my volume okay? Cool. Sorry, my angle's sort of funny. This is my studio setup. My screen's up on the wall so I can see my students as I'm playing at the piano. So I figured I'd put the camera up there so I'm actually looking at you while I'm talking. So I am perhaps the most recent graduate of Lamont. I just graduated in the spring during COVID, which was really super interesting to try and give a graduate degree recital during COVID. Before I did my undergraduate from 2007 to 2011, so quite a while ago, in Montana, at the University of Montana. And at the time, I was just, right after I graduated, I lived in Montana for a year, and I was freelancing, and I did seasonal work in Glacier National Park as like a lounge pianist, and just trying to make ends meet in Montana, which is sort of tricky as a musician. So I decided to sort of strike out for the city, and I moved to sort of spontaneously to Oakland, California. The Bay, I like to say the Bay Area in general, because it's just one big connected city. And tried to freelance out there. It's also very challenging, especially just with an undergraduate degree from a small school. So I used some of my other skills, which is carpentry and construction, which I grew up in doing when I was younger in my dad's business. So I used that as sort of my career or as my bread and butter while I was teaching on the weekends, accompanying and doing sort of small gigs here and there. But I had a really deep passion to get back into grad school and just to get my master's so I could really feel like I could dedicate myself to my craft a little bit more and get my fingers away from power tools. So I applied, I guess, 2 years ago. And my reason for coming to Lamont was I got a graduate teaching assistantship. I got some scholarships or scholarship, I guess, and it was also really close to family. And as Madoka said, it's beautiful scenery, and it's some of the best in the country and in the world. So it's really great to have all the recreation options. And like I said, my family is close by there. So I also, another reason for coming was I studied piano pedagogy for my master's degree. I had initially applied for performance, but having been in California in sort of the real world as a musician, I thought it was more practical for my skill set and my level and my passions to get a pedagogy degree and focus on teaching. And so while I was at Lamont, I also got my yoga registered. I got registered as a yoga teacher and was able to get a job at the Ritchie Center, which is houses the gym on campus. And so I was really fortunate to be able to teach yoga classes while I was a student there, which was very, very fulfilling, if not just also additional income. And I guess that's about it for my story. Well, besides after graduating this spring, I just moved to San Diego. I wanted to come back to California, and I sort of had a network set up in Oakland, as Madoka was saying, going to those places where you have a network. But as COVID sort of developed, I realized that I might just need to sort of strike out to where I wanted to end up, because Oakland isn't really where I want to buy a house and raise a family. So I kind of made just like I want a bold kind of choice to kind of come to San Diego and start my business here. So I'm just getting my studio set up. I was really fortunate to find a place where I can live and teach yoga and piano. So I'm really excited, but I'm still in the very beginning stages of sort of starting this second career for me. So yeah, and that's about it.
That's awesome. Thank you. And I mean, I'm struck just listening to all three of you share in your experiences, like the common, even though maybe, your specific path was different, like some common themes of like your network, kind of thinking ahead to the end, like where do I want to be or end up? How do I kind of reverse engineer to that spot? Definitely kind of stood out to me. And I mean, the obvious kind of impact of COVID on music has been, it's been so significant, right? So I kind of want to start there in this to ask, and again, no specific order, feel free to just jump in as you feel compelled to share. But if you could just speak to maybe how have you had to be adaptive during COVID and as a musician, and thinking about how you have other skill sets and other interests that intersect, and how have you had to leverage your network and those things together to survive and to adapt in this new environment. And if you could just speak to the opportunities that you see, how you've overcome your struggles in the current climate, I think that would be really insightful for both our current and prospective students.
Yeah, so in my case, I was performing, it was basically 2 straight years of performing 7 nights a week, 6 nights a week, something like that. So it was constant performing all around the world to all of a sudden absolutely no performing. And when I was on tour, I didn't have an apartment set up. So I was just kind of, if I had a week off or something, I'd go and stay with family. And so when the pandemic hit, I had to, find a place to live. And I was fortunate that some of my family had a room for me that I could go and stay in. And so right now I'm actually in Kansas City. I'm not in Denver. And so all of a sudden I was displaced. Now I'm in Kansas City and I don't really have any network here. I have just like one sister, and so I had to completely change gears and call back on the things that I had done like in grad school and then shortly after grad school. So I had to build up a private studio again, and I had to call on performers that I'd worked with in the past, who weren't, necessarily on the Broadway show and things like that, but people who I had done a lot of like classical work with, because we were used to collaborating online and things like that. So I found myself actually relying more on what I did 2 years ago to be able to have any sort of, I wouldn't even call it success, but to have something to do right now. I mentioned earlier that, getting published was a big thing for me. And so that was work that I'd done in undergrad and graduate school. I premiered the piece at Lamont. And so I just decided, let's make this work now. So it was just calling back on those things, because what you do as a musician, at least now, we're always adapting. Before the virus hit, I had to change myself as a performer with almost every performance I was giving. And now that there is no performances, I have to change myself again. And that's sort of the name of the game, I think, being a modern musician. We often aren't hired to play the same gig over and over and over again, unless you're really lucky. But that might not even be that lucky, because you'd get tired of the same gig over and over again. So we have to be adaptable, and the arts have always been adaptable. We're always sort of the first to react to something that happens in the world. And so that's sort of just the name of the game. And for me, it was, going back to what I had done before, because that was where comfort was. And that's what I knew, because I didn't know what was going to be in front of me. So I had to go back to what I had done before to have any sort of leverage, I would say.
Kind of building on what we were talking about, music being sort of, well, maybe not building on what you were saying, but music is sort of a soothing reprieve during the COVID for a lot of people. And as a teacher, I felt a lot that I was sort of having to also be kind of a therapist for some of my students, especially as a GTA. I had like 13 undergraduate students, and then about 5 or 6 from the prep program, the pedagogy prep program. So just from like little kids to college level kids, just sort of really just using music as a salve, I guess, for the anxiety and the stress that COVID brought for a lot of us. And I guess I sort of see a lot of opportunity there for music, because I mean, that's sort of why people even why music is still around, is people use it because it brings enjoyment. And so I think that really sort of tapping into the stress relieving and the soothing effects of music, not only as a teacher but as a performer, I think has been sort of where I'm challenged now to sort of create my image and create and find my niche in the business. So I guess my adaptability, I mean, I lost my job as a yoga teacher, so I've had to sort of create, like Instagram or videos online for people to watch instead of being able to do things in person, but still really feeling sort of drawn to provide that for people, and also kind of combine it with music and in whatever ways I can in the future. So
I'm actually really inspired, and I'm amazed how both of you guys have been serving for the community, using your skills, using your music. I actually went inwards. It hit me hard because I started to work as staff pianist in January at Lamont, and there was nothing, and I needed to make policy, and I was just given hours and the studios and number of students. And it's still wobbly. It's still not perfect, but I just used what I know from the past. But I was basically struggling with my job. It's really, I'm super grateful. Like, I'm gonna skip everything. Right now, I'm so grateful that I have this job. It's difficult. I have 10 recitals this quarter, like in person. Like, I didn't expect this to be full on. So it's hitting me hard after taking a break in the summer, but I am really grateful. But that said, I did take a big chunk of time off during the summer. I was really burnt out from playing. Like, last 3-4 years since I started to freelance, I was also working as staff pianist at Colorado State University, and that was about the same amount of work. I had 47 juries every semester, and it's about, I think, 70, 80 new pieces that I had to play every semester. So it was a lot. And at that point, kind of Zach was saying, I repeat the same thing. It's like, what's the purpose of me playing? I'm just serving. So when the world stopped, I stopped, and I needed to think what I'm doing. And I needed to recover and take my time to appreciate music again, which I don't know if it's the right thing to say here, but I did need to do that. I'm just being really honest. But what I did was what I didn't do in my undergrad. I said, Colorado is really beautiful, but I didn't do anything outdoorsy. I only practiced. I took advantage of the facility, the beautiful facility, and practiced. But I took advantage of being in Colorado, hiked a lot, just faced myself and tried to figure out what I wanted in my life. And now, how I changed how I gig besides my job at Lamont is I always joked I'm an accompaniment delivery. And I literally do that by carrying my keyboard, and I rehearse outside with people when possible so that they don't have to book a room, we don't have to be inside, we wear masks and be outside and hope that the sun doesn't set early. So yeah, I went through a lot, and I found myself and passion again in music, and I try to make the best I can do with music now.
We appreciate the honesty. I think that
Sorry, it was a lot to drop.
No need to apologize. No, I'm just, and I keep seeing Seth, you're, just having the video up high, right? I just keep reminding of like, just change in perspective, right? It just kind of like can throw you off, right? When things happen, but there can be a beauty in that too, of the unexpected, like maybe you were just cruising along doing something, not really thinking about it too much. And then to have these changes, you kind of have to step back and say, okay, do I actually like what I'm doing? Do I want to pivot? Maybe some of those backburnered interests, or Zach, as you put, I think the loose ends, like what things have I not finished or worked on in a while? Let me bring those back up, or Seth, other interests like yoga that you could incorporate in a new way or in a different way. And I think, again, you all talked so much about your network and how you didn't make these changes successfully alone. And so just thinking about, again, the students who will listen to this, the students that are here, and that's something that, I'd imagine, Carolyn, we always are like lecturing students about networking and the importance of it. And I wish there was a cooler word than networking for it. But what were some things that you practically did, during your degree, or that are just a part of your life now professionally, that you think have made you successful at networking or building relationships? Was it that you went to office hours with your faculty, or you were just friendly in the buffet line and talked to people? Like, what are some of those like small things that you've done, or that you've seen other people do that have made them successful in building a network? Because that has been your safety net, it sounds like, for a lot of you, of having those people to call back on.
Yeah, I think for me, sorry, my phone was ringing. For me, the main thing was I have to, like, you need to be friends with people. I don't want to work with somebody who's a jerk. There's this sort of weird idea in the music industry that, oh, if you're really, really good, you can be a jerk to other people. I've never understood that, because some of the best musicians I've ever met were the most friendly people I've ever met, and they were extremely humble. And so I've always felt that just being able to hang out with somebody and have a conversation with them, that's a huge part of networking, because yeah, your friends are where you're going to get your next job from quite often. And I've been finding myself referring friends from my past gigs to new opportunities that are coming up, and then they do the same thing for me. And it's just, yeah, being friendly, I suppose, is the main thing with me. I don't want to, when I went on the tour, or even on the cruise ships, you literally live with the same people that you're performing with. You share a room and shower and everything. And so if you hate that person, you're going to have a horrible time, and you're not going to continue that network. But if you learn to just be friendly with everybody, that will always help. So that was sort of my main thing, was just to be easy to get along with. But it does sometimes backfire, because I've also had it where people think maybe I'm too laid back and not serious enough about something. So there is sort of a balance that you have to strike, or at least I've had to strike. But yeah, for me, it's just about being able to make friends with the people that you want to work with and that you are working with, because that comes back later.
Also, kind of building again on what Zach was saying, but the competitive nature of our career and school kind of puts us in a crowd of sometimes not the friendliest people, I guess. And the most important thing that I had to learn, I think, was to not take anything personally when you're networking. There's just there's going to be your people that you prefer to work with, of course, and that are great clients to work with. But sometimes there's going to be people that are just not ideal. For example, when I was first moving out here to San Diego, I just called like a ton of piano teachers. And I had a few who were so nice and were like trying to help me as much as possible. And they were typically older women, but I had a few people who were like, why are you calling me? You know, like just not very nice, and sort of feeling like I was their competition instead of just trying to network with them. So a lot of it is just not taking those things personally, because even like a negative reaction to sort of those people who were perhaps negatively reacting to me might close off some door in the future, some sort of opportunity in the future. So as long as you just let everything sort of roll off and be easygoing, sort of like Zach is saying, then these connections will come back to you. You don't want to like necessarily close off any connections by taking things personally and responding in a offended way.
I can totally relate with that. I was told always assume the best in people, and always assume that people are doing the best, and we never know what's going on in their life. Like, even if they're being inconvenient to you, they might be doing their best. And it's just, we just need to be grateful for what we have, and also not taking things personally. Was definitely my case, because I hope for the best and expect the worst, and I go extreme sometimes. I just forget to hope. But the other thing I wanted to add is my graduation from DU. There was a guest speaker. I don't remember who he was, but he was a filmmaker or director of some sort. And he was saying he was a yes person. When he graduated, he didn't know what he was going to do in his career. And someone asked, hey, do you want to go on I don't know if it was a travel or just move somewhere completely random. And he just decided to say, okay, sure. And then he just kept saying okay and sure to random things, and he's now a director, long story short. And I could relate to that as an undergrad, because I just loved playing with people, and I wasn't even charging people as a undergrad or first 2 years especially. I just played for friends. And then at one point I got comments that I need to start charging because I'm undercutting people, first of all, and that I can't handle so many workload, financially speaking, I need to work. So, and after I graduated from IU and came back here and used my network to find work, some of my gigs were volunteering as experience. So it wasn't paid, but I did it anyways, despite people's discouragement. And after doing that for a few months, I started to have really good gigs. And now I look back, I don't know if I would have had anything if I didn't do so many free services. So be brave and be willing to do things for fun sometimes, or take the risk sometimes, is also very important, I think.
No, it's great advice from all of you. Zach, were you going to jump in?
I just wanted to add to what Madoka was saying about like saying yes to things. I think that's extremely important. I found when I was in Denver, like I wanted to kind of expand my horizons a bit. I always use that phrase, so I probably wear it out. But I started going down, there's a big comedy scene in Denver. There's a lot of stand-up comedy and improv comedy. And so after I graduated, I was like, I'm going to go and check out this improv comedy club. It was called the Voodoo Comedy Club, but now it's called Rise Comedy. It's down in the Market area. But I went there and I was like blown away by the different performances. And there was one show that just blew my mind, and it was these improvised musicals where they just created a musical on the spot. They had like 6 people on the stage, and they had a pianist who would just play, and they would sing and everything, and it was incredible. And I decided, I was like, oh, I want that gig, but I had no idea how to get it. And I just started saying yes to things. Like people found out I was a musician, and so they would ask me to go on their show at that like club and just provide background music while they were doing a skit or something. And so I started saying yes to that, and I ended up getting that job as an accompanist for the improv musicals. And I am completely sure that that led directly to me getting the Broadway tour, which was my biggest credit to date. So saying yes, yeah, even small gigs, because those improv gigs weren't really paid up until I started doing a lot more of them. And you kind of question like, oh, is this really a good idea? You know, I'm not getting paid and I'm trained so much, but it really can pay off in ways that you just don't expect. And so I definitely agree that, yeah, saying yes and being open-minded is absolutely essential, and it will usually pay.
I was going to add open-mindedness, definitely.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I would also like to echo the sentiment of not saying, of kind of avoiding no as much as possible, especially in your early undergraduate, just for experiences, not only just for the networking, but just like to find out what you like. Like Madoka was saying, I didn't even know I liked chamber music till I started accompanying people, and then I went like overboard and was doing more than I needed to because I enjoyed it more. But it's one other thing that I was just thinking about networking that's sort of a weird cross careers network that I've been able to do is when I was working in carpentry and construction, I was in some rich people's homes, essentially installing their cabinetry, and I still have those connections now, and they're still sending me people that they know in this area. So those are perhaps the least ideal people to like for me to want to be friends with. They're very hard to like work with, but I'm still maintaining that network because of the potential that it can provide. So
that's sort of one thing that's cool about music, though, is that it affects everybody. Everybody listens to music. Everybody, or most everybody, was enjoying live performances of some kind before the pandemic. And so, yeah, to say no to a certain, if it's a group of people, or to say no, like you said, is kind of, it's kind of foolish. You know, there's no reason to say, or to be blatantly against something like that. So yeah, you find weird connections like that can really pay off, especially if you're selling music. If you have anything you're selling, even if it's lessons or if it's an album or anything like that, you need to be open to anybody at all buying it to make a living doing that. So
I think relating to open-mindedness and saying no, it's sometimes important to say no. Like learned how to say no. I had to learn how to say no to protect myself so that I don't overwork myself. But when you do say no, you can choose how to do it. You can just say like, no, unfortunately, I'm not available. That's professional. But you can also say, oh, I wish I could do that. And I would love to. And you're not being fake necessarily. It's just honest comments sometimes, but as a person who is being rejected, the image of the person who is saying no is completely different, I think.
And I think if you do say no, going back to the networking thing, it's always great to have somebody that you can like call on to maybe take whatever that opportunity might be. And being a student, it's absolutely perfect because you're around all these other players who want to perform and do work. So I have another Lamont graduate, his name is Russ Callison. He's my go-to guy if I can't do a gig or if I need to say no, or even if I just kind of want to say no for some reason. I know I can call on him I can just refer him, and whoever you're saying no to, they always appreciate a referral more than just a blanket no. So yeah, I think that's knowing when to is very, very important. And then, but if you can also follow it up with someone in your network, that's going to pay you back later.
So in sort of a circuitous way, because I play with Russ Callison's duo partner, I might actually get a gig through a weird, strange network from Zac. If he was to refer it to Russ, Russ couldn't take it, he might refer it to us. So small world.
Cool, that's really cool.
And yes, small world, it's important. Always know that the music world is small world. Like, yes, making connection is important, but also not burning bridges is important.
And people gossip too, or they like word travel, you know. So if we mentioned earlier about being friendly, yeah, if you're a jerk to people, that gets around. There's in the musical theater world, there's names that like you kind of look out for. You know that they're going to be jerks or they're really just awful to work with, and then that comes back around. And so when I'm looking through, if I'm hired on a show and I look to see who's on it, I look for certain names or who the hiring person was.
Right.
Just because, yeah, word gets around because it is small. Yeah.
One specific networking thing that I can think of from my past that sort of just came up was saying yes to composers for new music. I feel like new music also provides a lot of potential for just is my microphone still on? Okay, sorry, it changed color for some reason. So just for professional opportunities, but also just figuring out what kind of music you like. I didn't know that I liked new music until I started experimenting with some, and still have networks with some composers who may need a recording of something or whatever. I haven't lately, but I still have that network and that connection just in case.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. One of my big things has always been like performing new works, and those composers, they work really, really hard. You might not ever see them performing, but they have their hands in so many different areas of music that it really is beneficial to befriend them and play their works. I'm friends with Sarah Persky, who's another Lamont graduate, and one thing that we did is she composed a piece for this flute and guitar duo that I play in, and we were able to play it at Lamont, and then we were able to tour with it. But because we were touring with it, she was able to collect royalties on that. And then that work was like, it led to a bunch of other opportunities. And it was all just because, yeah, we befriended a composer. And so we did that with several other composers, and it's paid off a lot. A lot of composers will run festivals. So you can, if you have them write a piece for you, you can premiere it at their festival. And all of a sudden you have a premiere and a festival and probably a couple other things that you're going to be able to do. You've just created an opportunity by being friends with somebody and asking, oh, you know, write something for us. And composers often, they want that. They can write a piece if they're in school for a grade, but it would also be great for them to know that, oh, my work is actually going to be performed. And so that's a really important thing. And I wish that music schools would, and I include Lamont in this, I wish that they would put more of a focus on that. Like, we need to be pushing our students' performances more rather than just, oh, let's play Beethoven again. let's play in the classical guitar world. It's like, oh, let's play Fernando Sor, let's play Francisco Tárrega. It's like, no, let's play new works by our students or by graduates from our program. Let's make this, let's highlight what our students can do, because it pays off, I think.
And then you can also say that you can put that on your resume, something like world premiere. For example, I've been able to put on my resume that when I went to a music festival in France and played some compositions there, that I performed internationally and did world premieres internationally. Or for example, we played a piece in the chamber competition that was a United States premiere of Daniel Schnieder, who's based out of Berlin. So it was even just in the last year, we were able to sort of premiere a piece in the United States. And it might not seem, it's great to have that on your resume for the future or whatever, looking back, because maybe that composer might be the next Arvo Pärt or whoever. And so, and also going back to what Zach said, as far as composers being involved in sort of everything, a lot of times they're really great with music technology. And so like recording your recital, if you're made friends with a composition student, you could get that done for free, or maybe not your recital, but like specific pieces. So keeping that network, I think, is really important.
Yeah, I don't want to dominate the conversation, but now I'm like really getting into this. But to, again, go off what you were saying, Seth. So I befriended Stephen Bailey, who I think he still teaches at Lamont. He was in my class along with Krista. He was a composition student, but after we graduated, he wrote a work for my flutist and I, and we performed that a lot. But then also when I needed a new audition tape, I hired Stephen because he does a lot of audio work. And so he and I, we spent just an afternoon in this church in Denver, and he recorded me playing several pieces. And then that turned into like one of my main audition reels that I use. And it's gotten me years worth of performing work. And I know him because of, he wrote a piece for me because we asked, and we went to school at the same time. And so, composers, they kind of do everything. I mentioned Sarah Persky earlier. She's a librarian. And so I have intentions to speak with her about some library stuff later on. But she's also a phenomenal composer. And another friend of mine, she runs festivals, but she's a phenomenal composer as well. So composers, I think they're kind of what you need to befriend them, because they'll help you out in that way, but they might even do some work for free. So like for our undergrads or our potential undergrads, I think it's important to make friends with these other players and students who aren't just your same instrument, because they'll have something that they can help you out with, and you can help them out with something too. And it's little things like that that can push your career further than just hanging out with the same people of the same instruments. That was horribly worded, but I think I got it.
I think it was wonderfully worded. And I loved, just how you were feeding off of each other. And again, because it's all connected, right? It's not just about like, oh, I network and I build my career. It's all this kind of circuitous but connected like web of relationships and paths together. And I know we have again some students on. I'm curious for the students and prospective students listening, either feel free to just unmute yourself and ask a question, or what's sticking with you in this conversation, or what questions are coming up for you, like, okay, that sounds cool, but like, how do you do that? Or what's coming up for you. Feel free to unmute yourself or to type your question in the chat. So I want to make sure we get to your questions. I also think, Seth, we should make a Lamont shirt that just says "Avoid No," like Lamont School of Music. I think would be, and then maybe Angela, for perspective, then you could say like "Avoid No," and then on the back it'll say yes to Lamont" or something like that. I think that could be a really great
I love that idea.
promotional. I would wear that shirt. I know, at least.
Coffee mugs or something, some kind of swag.
Yeah. But any questions from students, prospective students? Carolyn, I'll put you on deck for a question. I know you always have questions.
Oops, the wheels are turning. One has not yet formulated at this moment, but give me a moment. I assure you something will come. And maybe even just, looks like Colleen has a question, so I can read that out loud. But even though I know those who are on the panel are kind of going back and forth, certainly if there's a question that pops up for one of the other panelists, bring that into the picture. But I'm going to read from the chat what Colleen has said. So Colleen, thank you for your question. They say, I am very interested to hear about the process of auditioning and applying for a Broadway tour. Could you go more into detail about that process? Thanks, Colleen.
I could talk about that one. So yeah, that for me, you have to kind of, it's good to know the business a little bit before you try to get into the business. I wish I would have known that before I got into the business. There's like 5 Broadway companies that do national tours. And there's 2 different kinds of tours. There's a union tour and there's a non-union tour. Since if you're in Denver, that's not really a union bound city. So you kind of want to look at non-union tours. But the 5 companies, and I'll say this, and you might want to write them down because this is really important stuff. So there's Networks Presentations, there's Troika Entertainment, Phoenix Entertainment, Big League, and Worklight Entertainment. And there might be a couple others that pop up every now and then, but those are the 5 main ones. And what I did is I went on, I think it was playbill.com, and they always post auditions for tours. And I just happened to get lucky, and Networks needed guitarists for the next year. And so I sent off that tape. It was the same tape that I mentioned earlier that I made with Stephen Bailey. And I actually didn't expect to get the gig because the video was all classical guitar. But I was saying yes to everything, right? I was just sending that tape off to literally any place that needed a tape for something. And I didn't expect to get the job, but I ended up getting it about 2 weeks later. And what these companies usually look for is, it's much like auditioning for a music school. They'll say, we need 4 examples or 4 excerpts of like dance music, an overture, you know, an aria or something like that. There's always just a list of things, and you need to send it along with a resume and usually a headshot. And that's sort of what you need to make it into the first round for those tours. And those are for the national tours. If you live in New York, you kind of would have an advantage because you can get to know who the actual contractors are for tours, and you can befriend them and get to know them. And then if they see you play, they might just ask you if you would like to go on a tour. I know some people have gotten performances that way. I know there's a recent Lamont trumpeter who he did, I think it was Margaritaville this last year. And I looked up his bio, and he had played on the Frozen show when it was in Denver, and Denver was the city that premiered Frozen. I don't know if you guys knew that, but it was premiered in Denver and workshopped there before it went to actual Broadway. And because he worked on that show at the DCPA, which I think he got through a Lamont professor, I'm assuming. I haven't talked to him, but I'm assuming that's how he got it. Because he performed there, he was probably put in contact with the company that was doing the Margaritaville tour. So he had to use his connection that way. And he kind of, I would say that's kind of getting lucky in a sense, because you're on a show and then you get recognized. I don't know if he had to pass an audition for the tour or not. But in general, the touring or the audition process is what I mentioned earlier. And I'll say those names again, because this is a lot of times where you end up finding opportunities. It's Networks, Phoenix, Troika, Big League, and Worklight. And if you just go to their websites, you'll see they have all the shows listed. Unfortunately, no shows are happening right now. Like, and if anyone tells you otherwise, they're lying. There are no tours happening right now, and probably not for another year. So that gives you time to work on to work up materials like that. I definitely recommend getting, like, figuring out, if you want to make a tape, like what pieces you could work on, and make it look decent. Presentation matters for audition tapes, you know. I think that always helps. So yeah, sorry, someone posted. Yeah, Networks, Phoenix, Worklight, Troika, and Big League. Yeah, those are all spelled correctly. Cool. I hope I answered the question. Sometimes I just start talking and I might gloss over the important stuff. So.
Yeah, thank you. But yeah, Carolyn, any other, and again, prospective students, type your questions in the chat. But Carolyn, any questions that you wanted to wanted to ask based on what you've been observing?
Here's what's remarkable. Normally I'm full of questions, and I apologize. They are not coming to me at this moment. And that's where I'll say again, whether to Krista or Angela or Erin, and again, the current students and prospective students, sometimes a question I like to put out there, and Megan, you kind of hit on it, is just, what resonated, as you're listening to the different stories. Each of you brought different layers to your own journey and experience, but is there something, whether for the current students, prospective students, and staff and faculty that are here, anything that resonated for either of you in all of the stories that you heard? And that goes for the panelists as well.
I'll say what resonated for me is I'm hearing that it's a tough time for everyone, but I'm hearing a lot of optimism from you all. And yeah, I would concur. It is a tough time for everybody. And, maybe one question I do have for you guys is, can you go into a little bit more detail about how you're connecting electronically and like keeping the gigs going and in the absence of all of the live performances?
Sorry to interrupt. Hi, my name is June, and I'm an international graduate student in Lamont. And actually, I've already talked about my situation with Megan previously. And have you seen any international student who were able to find jobs as musician or playing gigs during school or after graduate? Because I would like to hear the good news in some way to continue work and get to play and sing as a musician in here. And then probably you guys don't want to in a situation, related to like immigration and stuff, but for me it's a real thing. And I would like to continue study and music in here. So have you ever seen any like international students continuing doing the music work, and any cases have you seen, and can you tell me the stories?
I'm one. I was an international student.
I see.
Yeah, I was an F1 student for 6 years, and I guess I could have done OPT. OPT, for those that don't know, is the 1-year work permit that every international students can get. So I guess if I did OPT after my undergrad and then after my master's, I could have done 2 years. But that was my plan right after my master's, to work as much as possible using the network. And in my case, I think I was also lucky because I also got my green card through marriage. But also, I did use my network to get university job. I don't know about Lamont. I don't know many international students that got hired at Lamont, but at Colorado State, they were offering visa status. So for you, while being in school, knowing people that are working at places, when I was looking for a job, it was definitely a thing, asking around to people, like, how did you get a visa? How did you do that? Where would you go? And I know there are places that have a lot of former international students getting a visa through the company. It's just knowing the people, and even applying for, say, like artist visa. Some lawyers, some attorneys are really good and fast. You just need to know who you ask and where you go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I haven't,
Sorry.
I'm not an international student at all, but I did work with a lot of international players on cruise ships. I worked in particular with a violinist who is from Thailand. And so we've talked a lot recently about like what she has to do to stay in the States and things like that. And from what I've understood, at least with cruise lines, whenever cruise lines eventually open back up, is they do take international students, but you will still be like working in the United States. And that's what my friend did for years. She'd get full-time work on a cruise ship, performing it was classical chamber music and quartets and things like that. So I know that was one thing one of my colleagues was able to do.
Thank you.
And two things. One, it looks like Isabella has a question, if I can read that out loud. And then June, I'm not sure, this might not even be your interest in terms of the world of Disney, but I know Disney has a pretty steady, stable production and entertainment branch of their company, a lot of which is on pause right now. But my guess is they probably hire a lot of international musicians for their productions, so that may be worth checking out as we move through this time of COVID and those opportunities start to open up.
I would definitely recommend, looking into any sort. Disney is a great one. They hire tons and tons of musicians. And with cruise lines, there's so many cruise lines, and you can just look up an agency, and they can usually they can help put you on a cruise line. I can get more into that later if anyone's interested, but that's just where I've worked with a lot of international students. Whereas like on the Broadway tours, there was actually no international players. I think we had one or two people in the cast who were Canadian, but for the most part, the Broadway tours they didn't seem too excited to hire internationally. I don't know if that's the way it is now or if it will be that way in the future, but I think cruise lines are definitely something to consider. Unless you absolutely hate being on a ship, then maybe not.
Thank you. Thank you.
In June, I know when we chatted last time, I'd mentioned a friend of mine who is also from South Korea, and she's a music therapist here in Denver. And so I just sent you an email because she agreed to be contacted by you. So I just sent you her information. So feel free to reach out to Becky. But yeah, all such good advice. And but like again, that's where these little connections happen, right? Just knowing the places to look and having those ideas.
Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm. You're very welcome.
So Isabella raised a question that really is sort of speaking to this probably confidence, self-efficacy. And they mentioned, I have a lot of friends who attend the Berklee School of Music, and sometimes they ask me to play with them. They're all very experienced jazz musicians, and I don't feel like I can play with them in a way that can support them properly. They play bass. So the question of, is there any way to support confidence and building that confidence to step into that jazz collaboration?
I think confidence is a really hard thing for me. When someone asks if I'm confident in my profession right now, probably say, sure, with fake smile. But I think one of the things that would help me with your situation might be to contact someone who you respect, who you know is great. You need to feel vulnerable enough to ask for help or present yourself. This is me. I'm feeling rather not confident enough to take this, but I would love to do that. Like, would you have any advice that I could take to prepare for this so that you feel assured and validated? I don't know, especially in the area that you don't really know much. It helped me to get through like pop gigs or wedding gigs that I first started.
A lot of the people I've worked with the last 2 years, like on tours and ships and stuff, a lot of them are actually from the Berklee School. And so one thing I've noticed about the Berklee players is they're not any better than the players that I see come out of Lamont or other music schools, because I'm playing the same gigs as they are, and they're playing the same gigs that people come out of IU or USC or wherever. So I have a hard time thinking that, Berklee puts out these great players and other schools don't. But the thing with Berklee players is they're able to get gigs because that school is really good at marketing their students. They just have a big name. So what I would say is don't question your abilities to the point where you feel like inferior playing with those people. I've never heard you play, but I have a feeling that you could totally play with them. And if something sounds a little off, then that's fine. It sounds a little off for a little bit. If you're a music student, you'll learn how to adapt and how to fix what might have gone wrong. And so by doing that, then you become better. And really, you just have to kind of just dive in and go for it. Maybe something goes a little bit wrong, but it's not the end of the, we are experiencing the end of the world. So if you go and play with somebody and something wrong happens, that's definitely not the end of the world. So yeah, I would say just really go for it, and being vulnerable is a very, very good advice, because then you don't get blinded by, you know, your own confidence, which I have seen Berklee players do. They're so confident because they went to Berklee that they're actually hard to work with, and they don't adapt to other players. So I think just by alone asking that question, you're on a great road to getting what it is you want. So don't
Yeah.
be.
So I was gonna say, going to music festivals, and you know, everybody being from Juilliard, NEC, and Cleveland, or San Francisco, USC, same thing. I find those people to, not everyone, but as you said, sometimes they act as though they're better, but not necessarily. Like, we all do the same thing, and we are trying to create one thing together. So it's not a competition at one point when you're collaborating and playing, which is what's nice about music and ensemble.
And we all have a different journey as well. We all are on a different path. We've had different experiences with music. We haven't all had the same privileges as far as how we were educated in music. So, and that doesn't really reflect upon what we still have to offer as musicians. Like, someone might be technically more proficient than me, but that doesn't mean that they have more expressive capability. So I think that a lot of it is confidence is built through knowledge, and experience is sort of my short answer. Experience, in experience, when you're having these experiences, you have to have a self sort of, you have not have the fear of failure. Making mistakes and sounding bad is also how you grow. It's not the only way that you grow, but it's one way that you get better and you grow, is to make a mistake or to make a bad sound and be like, oh, I don't want to make that bad sound again. You probably won't ever make it again. And so the other thing is confidence. If you really know your craft, then you're confident in it. If you really know your instrument and your skill. So building knowledge, really just applying yourself passionately to your craft and building knowledge, and again, always saying yes to experiences and new experiences, that will really build your confidence too. Because, for example, in my case, I was always a terrible sight reader. I just had like a weird technique and sight reading path when I was younger. But then when I got into saying yes to composers, I found out that I was really good at reading compositions. My brain just works better at that, and it built a lot of confidence. And in turn, my sight reading got so much better on the back end in classical repertoire. So, yes, experience and knowledge.
Another thing you could do, when I think about this idea of, oh, if I want to go and work with somebody and I think, you know, they're on a different level than me, how do I make myself confident and play with them? Because that can be kind of a scary idea, just to jump in and play with them. One practical thing you could do is you could work on like 3 tunes. You know, you could work on Autumn Leaves or anything like that, or just a couple standards. Work on those and then get in touch with those folks and be like, hey, let's go run through these tunes real quick, knowing like you've practiced them, and so you're gonna sound good. And that experience of playing with them will automatically be better, rather than just going in with whatever tunes they might want. You can maybe express a little bit of control and say, hey, I want to do these couple of tunes. That might be a practical thing that could help. I don't know. I'm just kind of spitballing ideas, but I know I have done that because I'm a terrible jazz player. And so I will, work on Autumn Leaves, and then I'll get with a couple other people, and I know I can play that one. And then I actually learn a lot about jazz just from playing Autumn Leaves again. But at least I've learned a little bit, and I guess it makes me look better. But that's maybe just something practical you could try as well.
Thank you so much.
And then you may have seen my cat walk through. There was another question. It's kind of building on a bit, in addition to what all of you have done around building those relationships, the network. When you go back to your time at Lamont, is there anything else specifically that you would say really supported you in your professional development and launching into your careers back in your days of Lamont?
Did you say a person?
It could have been anything. Just it was more like, hey, back when you were a student at Lamont, was there anything in particular that went on to support your professional development and launch your career? And if you're like, I don't know if there was anything then, sometimes I'll phrase a question if you could go back to that version of yourself back then, is there anything you would have given yourself advice on or done differently? So maybe you did get some support, whether from people or practices you took on. But yeah, in addition to the networking, what other things occurred in your Lamont time that supported your professional development? That was a major spin-off from Caitlin's question. So
I had a really great experience being funded by Lamont to travel to a national keyboard festival or a conference, excuse me, not festival. So I sent in an application to present on the topic of music and mindfulness and yoga at the National Conference of Keyboard Pedagogy in 2019. And I was accepted to do like a 5-minute lightning talk. I mean, I only went and presented for 5 minutes, but the fact that I was sort of representing Lamont and furthering my career and really networking with piano teachers all across the United States, they pretty much paid for the entire trip. And it came from the, I forget, I'm blanking on the name of the fund right now, but it offers, I think, $1,000 to every Lamont student each year for applicable things like traveling to festivals and conferences. So that was really nice to be supported that way, and just also have that opportunity to really sort of, I felt like I was a really great networking and sort of getting my foot in the door. So yeah.
I definitely agree with you, Seth. I did the same thing. I think I did it 3 times, and it was called the Joe Doxey Fund when I was there. I don't know if they've changed the name, but that thing is awesome. Because yeah, you can just get funded if you go and do a competition. I had a similar thing. It was, I had an international performance in Toronto with the flutist that I work with. And so we were funded to go out there, and doing that several times while I was in grad school, that gave me the confidence to like know that, oh, I can travel and essentially tour and perform around the world with the skills I've learned. It was a big confidence boost. And knowing that I didn't have to, go work at a diner for, 80 hours just to get enough money to buy a plane ticket, that was super helpful. And it also, that fund, that's how a lot of university professors will get, they'll get funding for if they go on a conference trip or things like that to do research. And so that gives you some insight into what it's like to be an academic and be in that world. And so I think that helped me out a lot too. So yeah, I guess 2 for that, the Joe Doxey Fund, and using that to your advantage.
I can relate to that. I use that same thing too. So when I performed at Carnegie, when I went to Kansas City to do concerto, when I went to a music festival, I got that fund from Joe. And I'm super grateful. He was really, I was there when he was still director. So I'm still really happy that I got to know him personally. But also I was gonna say, I didn't even know that fund existed until someone told me. So if I could go back to my days when I was a student, I would say, look into everything that's out there. I still get a lot of students saying, I didn't know that existed. And teachers saying, well, you need to look into this and that, everything is posted on this webpage. So yeah, looking into options and searching, doing the homework on your own before asking. And if you can't find anything, ask questions. I don't know if we're still going with, what we would tell ourselves if we can go back in time. Or I guess what helped me when I was there is what I was saying earlier from my teacher. He told me to assume the best in people, and I didn't always listen. And I needed to fix some problems too, but I learned my lesson, and I think it was very important. And also, I just realized I'm the only one who was there as an undergrad. You both were there as grad students. So as an undergrad, first time in the States, I still do, but I had even worse FOMO. So I wanted to do social events, I wanted to play with people, I wanted to practice, I wanted to play somewhere else too. But having a friend who can be honest with you and tell you what they see in you, and when you're struggling inside, and when you're not seeing yourself straight, it's also very important. I had a friend who was very realistic, and he's very friendly, but he knew what he wanted in his life. He worked so hard outside to financially support himself, and having that person as a role model helped me to feel like I was grounded as well.
Thank you. I think there's a lot that came out of that. Didn't really realize, and I'm embarrassed as a career coach, I didn't know there was funding, like career coach for Lamont students, that there was funding that you could pursue for conferences or festivals or research that came directly out of Lamont. So that's great to know, whether you're a current first-year student or prospective student. So thank you, that's news to me. I do wonder, sort of as a final prompt before we start to bring closure here, are there any final reflections or pieces anyone wants to share that resonated with any of you, or any final questions before we bring closure this evening?
I just had one last resource that I found that I didn't perhaps initially think was going to be as helpful, but pretty much the entire staff at the library, making friends with the librarians is like such a good idea. They're so helpful, and for all the projects as a grad student and research and requesting books and interlibrary loan, they're just really helpful. Just the fact that we have a music library is really, really nice as well. So make sure that you kind of get familiar, if you're an undergraduate or grad student, just get familiar with the library and I know that there's probably not librarians in there now, or at least Krista's not in there, but it's just really great to have access to that and to make friends behind the desk, because they will help you with everything. And there's a lot of things in the library that that aren't really like advertised unless you ask about, like as far as like some DVDs or whatever. There's a lot of things that you can, there's video cameras that you can use for recording, and really nice microphones and great stuff. So I highly recommend the library.
I'd also say too, the fact that the students we have here are actually like listening, and they came and took the effort to come and watch this, that is going to help you out a lot. If you keep that same sort of attitude throughout your career, in school and beyond, asking people who are doing the job you want, or maybe the job you don't want, talking with them and seeing what they have to say about their career path, that's extremely important. So bravo to you guys for taking this initiative and joining this call. I think that is one thing that has helped me out a lot, is just connecting to other people who were usually years ahead of me, but they were doing the job that I wanted. And I'd either connect with them, or I'd kind of like, not Facebook stalk, but I'd go on their website or whatever, see the things that they had done, and I would sort of do my own research to be able to do those same things. And so good for you guys to do this. I think that this sort of thing can really help out.
I think especially this time when performances are not happening, when we can't see each other in person, being brave is important. And what I mean by that, I mean, I'm also saying this to myself, but what I mean by that is, if you wonder about something, if you want to do something, go ahead and contact the person that you can think of. Some of us are overwhelmed with, talking to people on email, and everything is digital. But at the same time, some people are happy to hear from a new person, and I definitely can back that up. when like this kind of event, when someone wants to know how do we do this, what's your experience, I'm happy to talk about that. And also one of the things that's related to bravery is if you want to have connection, if you want to tell yourself be brave, record yourself, there are a lot of internet outlets, so like YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. Put your performance out there. Not anyone decent is gonna say, oh my god, look at this, it's so bad. It's their problem if they say that. Most likely people are gonna appreciate what you have. Like, when is the last time you sent any performance to your family members or extended family? As both Sass and Zach were saying, music is necessary, especially this time. And we don't need words to that. So like, it doesn't require a language. So it goes all over the place in the world. So be brave, put yourself up there.
I like
Thank
that a
you.
lot.
Yeah.
I was just going to also say, totally blanked on what I was going to say. I was taken by Madoka's words. Come back to me. One last really important thing I was going to say. I totally forgot.
Maybe it has something to do with bravery or.
I was going to say that not everyone's journey is a straight line through music. Sometimes you just kind of have to embrace what your journey is and what's happening. And I think all of us are on that right now. We're embracing what COVID has thrown at us, and so we're sort of taking the blows and moving forward as we can. So I think that it's important to sort of be patient and sometimes we always want things to happen now. I remember when I first started studying music, I thought I was going to be like a concert pianist in like 2 years. And like now I'm 30 and I'm teaching kids in San Diego, and it's not really where I saw myself, but I'm very much happy to be here. And it's sort of because I was patient with my journey. And and it's not a straight line as far as like I've dealt with a lot of performance anxiety as recent as like 2 years ago, and I still struggle with those things. It's not like I've ever really completed this journey. It's sort of like will always be working on my career and my skills as a musician. So it's the journey and it's not the destination.
I definitely agree with that. I'd like to add too that right now, like, we all had to change what was going on. Like, even if we were at a point in our career where we were like, oh man, this is where I want to be. Nobody like wanted the virus to happen. And, it just pulled the floor out from everybody. So all performers were affected detrimentally because of the virus. So we're all kind of in this together. We're all kind of experiencing the same dumpster fire that is our current state of existence. But I find comfort in that. Knowing that we're all on fire is better than me being the only one on fire, if that makes sense. And yeah, I think that was all I really wanted to add. I lost my train of thought as well. Here it is. The other thing is that sometimes I know I've gone through sort of existential crisis with the virus, thinking of myself as a musician, like I'm not considered an essential worker. I just lost my job and that was it. There was no one there to say, oh, well, here's something else you can do. I think a lot of other musicians kind of went through that, but I also remind myself that over time, music has always been constant. We've always had music. We can't say that about people in advertising or even in medicine necessarily. Like, music has always been there, but a lot of other things that are considered essential, or people who didn't lose their jobs, that hasn't been the case. So I have confidence that music will continue beyond the pandemic, and we will come out maybe different, but we'll still be musicians and we'll still be needed. And so, yeah, we have to be patient. Unfortunately, we have to be patient, but we can do that together.
And I wonder if this is the right thing to say or not, but kind of relating to what I was saying, as I was saying how I volunteered to perform a lot as an undergrad. I did a lot of I am willing to, and I was willing to do a lot of free performances during pandemic if I was asked. I just did a music offering at a church which I used to work at, And I just wanted to reconnect with people. It was socially distanced and outdoor basically, and it was safely done. But yeah, I can totally relate. Music is needed and people do want to hear that. So that's all I needed to say.
I think sometimes as musicians, we sort of signed up to when we signed up in this career path, we sort of made the choice that we were not really choosing finances over the fact of like what music provides for people. And music provides something so much more profound than money. So I think that that's sort of something that I constantly try and keep in mind as someone who's sort of anti-capitalist and having a hard time starting my own business. That like what I'm providing is more important to me than having a lot of financial success. So priorities.
Well, awesome. It's 8 o'clock. Thank you all so much. Krista, any closing words? I know you kicked us off, so if you want to wrap up, and again, thank you to Krista for all the coordination with the alums. Really just appreciate you putting all that together.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you all for being here. I think, as always, like all sorts of interesting perspectives and connections come up, just with the unique combination of people who are all here in this meeting. So I really appreciate that. I think, Carolyn and I have talked about this before, just how, I don't know, just how surprising some insights can be and how helpful to all be together talking about stuff. So I think I just wanted to make sure if Angela, if you had anything else that you wanted to say, that you got the chance to share that.
I just want to remind everyone that, I think we had 1 or 2 possible prospective students on here, but if you're interested in applying, the deadline is January 15th for taking applications now, and auditions will be virtual. Let me stick my email in the chat one more time so you have it, and that's all for me.
Sorry, what can I say? One last thing relating to the prospective students. All the staff and I think students too maybe got email from Keith, Director Word. Keith Word is the director of Lamont School of Music. And he was saying that at staff meeting last week, everybody realized that we were all so exhausted and tired. And he needed to motivate ourselves to take care of ourselves first and remember that we are all in this together, kind of like what Zac was saying. And coming back to week, I think it was 4, I was feeling overwhelmed already. And I was wondering why in week 3 I had so many breakdowns. But just hearing that from the director and the leader of the community made me feel so much better and so much less pressure that we are all doing our best and trying to make this better together. So if you are in need of a school that you feel like you can connect with people, Lamont is definitely a place for you, that you won't feel singled out or you're alone and you have to suffer by yourself. And again, like I'm a living example because I was an international student and I didn't have many friends except for dorm friends, and I was also an introvert. So I recommend Lamont.
I can attest to that also. It's the warm community of Lamont. I'm looking forward to being back there in person sometime, hopefully safely and soon. I just wanted to plug the library just a little bit since Seth brought it up. We are not offering in-person services right now other than curbside pickup, but we are online during business hours all day long, and we're happy to chat with you. We can scan things for you, and we can arrange for curbside pickup appointments. And there's a shocking amount of stuff that's already available for free online that we can help you find, whether it's repertoire, stuff for research projects, whatever. So I put that link down in the chat if you're interested in checking out our online guide. If you need any assistance from the librarians, we're still here for you. So yeah, I think I will go ahead and wrap it up with that. Thank you so much, alumni, guests, and Angela, folks from Career Services. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thank you. You all shared so much good wisdom, and while at least I am not a musician, lots of nuggets came through as far as sort of the yes and being willing to step in and experiment and So thank you. You all offer such great wisdom tonight. Thank you.
Agreed. Thank you.
Thank
All
you.
right,
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Until the next time.
bye.
Right.